really had to catch this guy to establish credibility after all the other issues, and it was just a matter of bringing this guy back to Boston.
Handling of anthrax attacks in 2001.
The way that it was done was about control. It was about fear, intimidation, and control.
Following the September 11th attacks, a series of letters laced with anthrax were mailed to news offices and senators. 5 people died and 17 fell ill. It quickly turned into one of the most complicated FBI cases ever, involving more than 10,000 witnesses. The case's conclusion was highly contentious. Initially, the FBI falsely accused Stephen Hatfill, and the resulting media frenzy destroyed his reputation. He later successfully sued the Bureau and was awarded $5.8 million.
That case was settled when the FBI agreed to pay him almost $6 million.
In 2008, the FBI claimed Bruce Ivins was the real culprit, a man who had volunteered to help their investigation. Not long after, Ivins took his own life in fear. Many have contested the FBI's accusation, arguing that significant evidence suggests they had the wrong man.
I'm still hoping somehow, because of the investigation, supposedly, that we will get some answers, and that's for 7 years I've been waiting for that. Ruby Ridge standoff.
It was bad. People, whatever views they have, whatever illegal activities they have, should not be shot down.
In 1992, the FBI made a severe deviation from its standard rules of engagement during the Ruby Ridge incident. Randy Weaver gained heat from selling illegal weapons, specifically sawed-off shotguns, to an informant. A trial was arranged, but things went south when the date was changed and Weaver wasn't informed.
I told Randy, I said, you don't really understand what the full weight and power of this government is and what it would really mean if you want a confrontation with it.
When he didn't show up in court, an arrest warrant was put out. The FBI handled this abysmally, breaking the rules of engagement by using deadly force when it wasn't justified, shooting Weaver's dog, wife, and teenage son during the standoff at the family's cabin. Civilian negotiators eventually convinced Weaver to surrender. It was a total blunder on the FBI's part, who instigated violence and made no effort to de-escalate the situation.
You know what I hope people take away from this is that always could have been prevented if Randy Weaver just would have showed up in court. Nobody wanted to go up there and kill anybody. We just needed to have him show up in court.
Whitey Bulger.
I suggest you think these things through before you make unfounded accusations against me.
It's commonly known that the FBI uses informants. James Whitey Bulger Jr., a notorious Boston mob boss, was one of their most controversial. Whitey employed brutal tactics to achieve dominance. In 1975, he became an informant.
Because James Bulger had such a strong and influential reputation, his name had value as a commodity for the Department of Justice. They needed search warrants to take down the mafia.
The FBI gave him complete protection, allowing his reign of terror to continue consequence-free. The DEA didn't care for his immunity, however, and in 1994 he became a fugitive. His FBI handler was arrested and sentenced to 40 years in prison. Whitey, on the other hand, wouldn't be caught until 2011, when he was 81 years old. He received 2 life sentences. In 2018, the cycle of violence came full circle when he was killed by fellow inmates.
It's been said that one of the reasons it took so long to catch Whitey Bulger is that people were looking for a gangster, and Bulger, whether he liked it or not, had ceased to be one.
Systemic forensic fraud.
There are so many file cabinets now with Frederick Whitehurst's name on them at FBI headquarters, they fill an entire office suite. And there are so many case files to be reviewed because of Frederick Whitehurst that 30 FBI agents and clerks are assigned the task for the next 12 months.
Dr. Frederick Whitehurst was an FBI whistleblower who exposed serious issues in the agency's forensic procedures. These flaws involved the FBI prioritizing support for the prosecution rather than adhering to objective science. This bias undermined the principle of neutrality, making many trials unfair. Instead of addressing these glaring issues, they promptly disputed Whitehurst's claims and fired him.
They're not going to crucify me. I'm an American citizen. I'm an FBI agent, and they can't touch me. Because they're going to sit off and throw stones at me. Well, okay, so what?
Whitehurst battled them in court, where he received $1.16 million from the FBI. The Bureau would eventually implement some reforms, but their mistakes have already done irreparable damage. Due to these flawed practices, many people sentenced to death were wrongfully convicted.
I think that people that go into court should be assured that they've got fair justice waiting for them, and that's what's important.
Infringements on press freedom and credibility. Freedom of the press is protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, yet that hasn't stopped the FBI from infringing on it. One example is antiwar.com, a website critical of U.S. foreign policy, which was directly targeted by the Bureau. In 2001, the site's manager received a hacking threat and reported it to the FBI. However, the FBI mistakenly believed the manager was the one who posed a threat. What followed was a difficult 6-year period of investigation and surveillance. In addition to targeting websites, the FBI has also impersonated journalists before, harming actual journalists as a result. For example, in 2007, they sent a high school student a fake article containing malware, allowing them to track his activities. No-fly list blackmailing.
All right, hold on. I got a primary on a target. Where? He's rapidly descending. You see that right here? I'll call you back.
After the September 11th attacks, Bush's administration created the no-fly list to prevent future attacks. The FBI is able to add and remove people from the list, a power which they've abused. Multiple individuals have claimed that they were falsely added to the list, which contains tens of thousands of names.
Hundreds or possibly thousands of innocent people are stopped and detained at our airports because of their name, when in fact all of that does nothing to improve security.
Not only that, but the FBI then blackmailed them, saying they would only be removed if they became an informant. Critics argue this is extortion and that the list should serve to protect citizens rather than to blackmail them.
It's incredible to see this win with the Supreme Court ruling, but it's important for us to recognize that there are still thousands of American families who are impacted by the no-fly list or the terror watch list, both lists that are unconstitutional.
Framing innocents for murder.
At first it used to reach me, the informant of Canary Bay. It doesn't reach me anymore because I have a purpose in life.
Joseph Barboza, also known as the Animal, was a mobster who caught the FBI's attention. The mob hitman became an FBI informant in 1967 and helped frame 4 men for the murder of Edward Deegan. Barboza himself was involved in the murder, but he was too valuable to the Bureau to send him to jail. The FBI even suppressed evidence that could have proven the 4 men's innocence. They received life sentences and were only cleared in 2001. By then, the damage was irreversible. 2 had died in prison, and the others had lost decades of their lives.
There was, in fact, a conspiracy at the top of the United States government to keep Joe Salvati in jail in order to protect informant murderers and liars and so forth.
Patriot Act abuse.
Before anyone had a chance to understand what went wrong, he proposed fixes that went far beyond fighting terrorism.
After 9/11, the Bush administration introduced the Patriot Act, aiming to tighten U.S. national security by preventing and responding to terrorism. While this is a noble goal, the FBI has massively abused the act. It allows them to conduct broader surveillance, which they've used to collect information on countless American citizens. In theory, this requires court approval, but the Bureau frequently bypasses this in practice.
What we were doing by all of these roundups is alienating those communities and making them more distrustful of law enforcement, less inclined to be cooperative, less inclined to volunteer and to come forward.
National Security Letters, NSLs, let them gather people's private information. The FBI insists these are vital tools. However, out of the 143,071 NSL requests, only 154 criminals were tried, a roughly 0.1% success rate, raising questions about how vital they truly are.
Trent Lott said the day the bill was introduced, maybe now we can do things we've wanted to do for the last 10 years.
No, I've always, a dictatorship would be a heck of a lot easier. There's no question about it.
Threatening letter to Martin Luther King Jr.
King and his associates, when they listen to the tape after reading the threatening letter, have no doubt whatsoever that this is from the FBI.
Some people believe the FBI was secretly responsible for the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. While this claim remains unconfirmed, they certainly had it out for him. In 1964, they sent him a suspicious package containing a letter and an allegedly incriminating tape recording. It was an attempt at blackmail perpetrated by the Bureau. Many, including King himself, argued that the letter was intended to pressure him into taking his own life.
When President Johnson stood to present Dr. King with another ceremonial pen, he did so with the full knowledge of the compromising information the FBI had gathered on him over the previous 18 months.
It included infidelity accusations and multiple uses of the word fraud. This was a failed attempt to discredit King after extensive surveillance. King and his wife correctly guessed who sent the letter and refused to give in to the demands.
King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do it. This exact number has been selected for a specific reason. It has definite practical significance. It was 34 days before the award.
Racial and ethnic mapping.
They've never been in a situation where they've had to wear a tactical vest. They've never been in a situation where they've had to actually apprehend someone and take them into custody in a safe and effective manner.
The FBI dedicates significant resources to mapping American communities by race and ethnicity. The 2008 Attorney General's Guidelines on Domestic FBI Operations provided broader surveillance powers, which the Bureau has since employed. These practices have been criticized for being based on racist stereotypes about criminal tendencies.
Well, essentially, the whole issue boils down to the principle that before you can use deadly force, you have to have probable cause that the subject of that force poses an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to yourself or somebody else.
For instance, in 2009, the FBI collected information about Muslim communities in Michigan despite no indications of criminal activity. The American Civil Liberties Union took them to court, seeking to make their mapping information public and challenging the constitutionality of this practice. Many believe it to be unconstitutional and grossly offensive. It's also prohibited by FBI guidelines, proving they don't even always follow their own rules.
It is an imperative for all of us in law enforcement to try to reflect the communities we serve.
Staging terrorism.
In fact, the bomb was an elaborate fake supplied by the FBI in a 6-month sting operation.
You'd expect law enforcement to prevent domestic terrorism, not actively participate. Well, the FBI sometimes subverts expectations. On numerous occasions, they've targeted unstable individuals and encouraged them to commit terrorist attacks. One of the most well-known cases involved Mohammed Osman Mohamud, who was influenced by an FBI undercover operation to carry out a car bombing in Portland in 2010.
The FBI says the teen had no known terrorist ties. He may have become radicalized through the internet.
The fake bomb attempt was foiled as the FBI had provided Mohamud with an inoperable bomb. They arrested him at the last moment. A 2014 Human Rights Watch report reveals that nearly 50% of federal counterterrorism convictions in the previous decade were based on informant-led cases, with almost 30% involving sting operations where informants played an active role.
Well, according to FBI officials, they gave him several other options along the way. They had been in contact with him since June of 2010, and they met in person. They had emails with him.
COINTELP Pro.
The blunt fact is that for millions of decent and loyal Americans, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has become the Federal Bureau of Intimidation.
What do you do when someone's beliefs are different from yours? Will you keep cool and agree to disagree, or blow a gasket? Well, the FBI likes to go one step further, as shown by COINTELP Pro. This involved mass surveillance, infiltration, and disruption of organizations it considered subversive. Targets of this scheme included feminists, civil rights activists, and communists, among others. It began in 1956 and finally ended in 1971. But not after doing irreparable damage to innocents.
COINTELPRO had started back actually in 1956 with a program that J. Edgar Hoover had initiated involving the Communist Party.
One notorious incident was the murders of 21-year-old Black Panther leader Fred Hampton and 22-year-old member Mark Clark in 1969. This was only the tip of the iceberg. COINTELPRO was responsible for countless atrocities and abuses of power. What do you think was the most heinous FBI crime? Let us know in the comments section.
Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.